Hey everybody, welcome back to the Beyond the Peloton podcast. I'm Spencer Martin from the Beyond the Peloton newsletter. I'm here with Andrew Vontz from the Choose the Hard Way podcast, which has just been relaunched. We'll let Andrew talk about it. TheBetterLab.io. We are going to break down some early season racing and then just a grab bag of whatever is on our mind on this cold February day. But Andrew, before we get into it, do you want to plug anything?
If you don't already, please follow me at HardwayPod on Instagram. That's where you'll find all the best information. You can learn things about the Everest Challenge and other incredible feats of indoor cycling Spencer and I, Jonathan Kaplan, are up to over the winter. If you want to sleep better and feel great for your workouts, go to the Apple App Store right now and download the Better Lab. We help you get consistent at doing science-backed practices to sleep better. People who use the product report that they feel and sleep about 20% better on the days that they do the practices we help them build. I also wanted to share that the Choose the Hard Way podcast is relaunching soon. I have a fantastic new title sponsor, blockchain.com, has come on board. If you crypto, then check out blockchain.com for all of your crypto needs. And I also am moving over to Substack. So find me on Instagram at HardwayPod, subscribe to the podcast and in the newsletter. I just wrote about our incredible Tucson experience and what I learned trying to catch up to Spencer Martin and Kip. Kip, congratulations on the new ride with Primal Audi. Can't wait to see what you do this season.
Big contract. I heard they broke the bank. Little like embarrassing admission. I recently saw a pair of Audi, not Audi bibs, Primal bibs for $29. Thought about buying them.
Can you send me a link? I'm getting a bit sheer in my current supply of bibs.
I cannot imagine. I don't know. I was actually thinking about buying you some. I was at the Tour of Tucson in-person merch store, which wow, I'm impressed that they've got that town on lockdown. They're selling merch 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. Way to go, TJ, at Tour of Tucson, which we might be at next year. So stay tuned. I'm sick, so I'm going to let you cook
too.
Here, Andrew.
This is great. We've got kids. We're sick people. It's winter. Everybody's locked inside. It was 2 degrees when I walked Dusty today. Man, I just watched that Harry Sweeney training video, which we should talk about. But I learned a lot from watching Harry Sweeney's videos. I really enjoy his content. I'd like to have him on Choose the Hard Way or on here. Maybe we'll get him on the show. One of the things I picked up, I was going to bring my buff with me and I forgot it, Spencer, knowing that we're doing video today. Did you catch the thing where he had an extra long buff and then he folded it? This is probably on the buff package and I just didn't see it. But you can turn your buff into a balaclava, which I didn't know. So he that was
yes.
Did you know that before you watched Harry do it?
I mean, I'm embarrassed to admit,
I didn't know either.
I guess it's just physics that he knows that we don't know.
Well, the one he had was extra long. So anyway, I tried that on my walk this morning. It worked. It was incredible. I also wanted to point out, we didn't talk about this, I don't think, on the Tucson episode that just aired you can hear the whir of my Normatex in the background throughout that audio recording, or if you caught it on the Instagram live feed, we did live stream that. But Harry also chose to get in a car at the top of the climb on his training ride. I don't know if you saw that in his video.
Well, I would say conditions were
a bit worse than 55 degrees on Mount Lemmon. I don't think we talked about this on the last episode either. I discovered when I got to Tucson, I have a Canyon rim brake bike that I picked up in 2020. And if anybody has a Canyon bike, it has a very strange mechanism for the star nut. And if you don't know what that is, it's the thing that actually compresses your headset. So it by compressing the headset bearings, it kind of damps your steering a bit. And if you're not able to compress that properly, basically your steerer tube moves around a bit inside of your head tube on your bike. It's very difficult to get it adjusted just right. And what I discovered after the Tucson trip, I tried to fix it while we were there, but my headset was not compressing. So basically, the front end of my bike was just all over the place anytime wind hit us, which was constantly on that ride. I've subsequently fixed it. That bike has now been shoved in a box. I've shipped it. One of the worst things that you can ever have to do is
As the day as a bike owner when you have to ship your bike via post.
I mean, you can
It's
do,
a
there are a
sad day.
lot worse things you could have to do in life, but of the things that you do electively in order to enable your habit of riding your bike when you go places, not very fun. My wife, Molly, said to me, "Why do you have such a complicated hobby?" And it's something that comes up all the time whenever we travel. Do you get this at home, Spencer?
Oh my God. Yeah. It's like, and it's shame because you're like, I don't know. I don't have an answer. And then your wife's going to just like show up with a pair of ons for you and be like, have you thought about running,
Yeah.
Andrew? Could this be your new hobby? Like, these are easier to pack than shipping bikes around the world. So they're there when you arrive. No, it's a sickness. I think that's what Kip said on the last show. And I agree with him. We're sick individuals. We can't
I don't want
get
to
better.
shame my family, so I'd never do something like join a run club, for example. Yeah.
Your kids have to deal with that. I mean, I'm in Austin, Texas right now. I admit I didn't know that it was so warm. Apparently, the southernmost U.S. capital on the mainland, it's like 80 degrees today. It's crazy.
It was caught
It's
in that
nuts.
polar vortex when we were down in Tucson.
It was like snowing in Austin when we were in Tucson. Yeah, and then those those Texas ice storms. You don't want to get caught in that. You're in trouble. But Harry Sweeney, since you brought him up, I do have thoughts on this really good YouTube channel, like super informative. Even just like dressing, he's in Andorra. It was like negative Celsius. It would probably be like similar to Boulder weather. So like between 20 degrees, and he's going
for
out
6
on a
hours.
ride and for 6 hours. And he's like showing you how it's also like Colorado too, because Andorra's not in the Alps. It's pretty far south in the Pyrenees. So if it's sunny, it's probably not unbearably cold. But just the way he's dressing, like putting on the bib tights, the under, like his, he has like a base layer with Rafa base layer with pockets to keep him warm. I thought that was super informative. Like if you're a young rider, that's the YouTube channel you should be watching. Also, Harry Sweeney, interesting guy, 26 years old, has been on 2 teams at the World Tour level, Lotto and EF. His first year on EF was last year. And, EF, we love them. We're huge EF Education Easy Post fans, not bigger fans than us, but it's kind of what would you call it? Like a mid-table team. Doesn't seem like they have the most resources. I was like shocked at like his training camp reminded me of something I would have done when I was in my mid-20s, like Harry Sweeney. Like you're just like by yourself, maybe with a few other people, like at a condo at a off-season ski resort. Like it's not a fancy lifestyle, and he's doing all his fueling himself. To me, it really showed like if you're on a team that's not Visma, and it tells you why Matteo Jorgensen went to Visma from Movistar. Can you imagine having to do that all yourself versus just showing up? You go to breakfast, someone made you breakfast. What am I eating today on the ride? Who cares? Like someone's taking care of it. That must be like make it so much harder. And you could see how people are like, am I really going to go do that? And I have to pay for this all myself? Like, yeah, maybe I won't. Like, I thought it was pretty eye-opening how different the environments and teams based on how organized your team is.
Spencer, I think a lot of listeners out there who may have followed Harry Sweeney's YouTube channel from the beginning, like myself, are thinking, actually, that's Harry Sweeney's home base. So that's where he lives. That's his house, or that's his apartment in Andorra. So that's his permanent base. He's there in the off season. He's there between races when he's ramping up and training for bigger events. He has I think his partner is getting her PhD in something at Oxford. She's there sometimes. And then he also has a buddy from Australia who's his filmer, who I don't know if that person lives with them or what. But yeah, he's doing everything himself. If you go back into previous episodes, I don't think he showed this in the current episode. He built an oxygen, like an altitude tent. He's at altitude, but he's also built an altitude tent in his bedroom, and it's gigantic. It's like takes up most of the room. It's like the thing they put ET in the film, The Extraterrestrial.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I remember that.
And but yeah, he's doing it all himself. And there were a couple of things from a technology point of view that I found to be pretty interesting. But before I talk about those, if you're deep into YouTube land with all of these pro cyclists, and like Remco's channel, for example, he's kind of doing the exact same thing, except his wife is there. Same thing, actually. Same thing with Camp and Ertz. Remco, Camp and Ertz, their wives seem to do like all of the food prep and everything. But like Remco's training videos, he had one where he did a 7-hour day before he got injured again recently. And his breakfast, I was like, did a 12-year-old make this breakfast? It's like the guy got like, you know, he toasted like 4 bagels and like got out the jelly, made some scrambled eggs, and then had a glass of orange juice. It's like, really, dude? But I mean, it makes sense. You need a lot of carbohydrate. You're about to go out and train. Andy was weighing everything, as did Harry. It seemed kind of miserable. And if you think gravel pros are training a lot, go take a look at what these athletes are doing. On the technology side, yeah.
Wait,
yeah.
Follow-up question. I was confused by this because in his most recent video, he's in Andorra, and he was like talking about being at altitude early. So I was like, all right, I can't quite figure that out. But then in like another episode from last year, he's in Isla 2000 in the Alps for training for altitude camp. But then I just assumed he didn't live in Andorra, because why would you go to? Did he recently move?
I don't know. I don't know what the altitude is in Andorra. I mean, I'm being geographically ignorant here, but like, let's take a look. What's the?
And it looked like he was driving from like Nice or something in the Isla 2000 video. I mean, Harry, if you I'm
gonna reach out to Harry. All right, so Isla 2000 is it's at higher altitude. It's at higher altitude. Yeah, so it's at 20.
Are you sure? Because Andorra's average elevation is 2,000 meters.
Well, Isla 2000, the ski resort where I think they're sleeping at night when they train there, is at 8,500 feet. Andorra's average elevation is 6,500 feet. The highest point is Coma Pedrosa at 9,652 feet, or 2,942 meters. So I don't know. Maybe he can sleep higher more consistently when he's at Isla 2000, because as I mentioned, even in his apartment, which is probably at least 6,500 feet, he does have an altitude tent. Who knows?
Is he? I guess you're supposed to sleep.
Yeah,
high.
you sleep.
I don't know.
High and train low. That's.
You're supposed to sleep. Now that you say that out loud, it is a little funny. It's like, yeah, you're supposed to sleep high, so you don't recover. So you get absolutely no recovery. I'm like, it seems a little funny.
Well,
I guess it works.
Yeah,
are you sure about that?
Anybody who's ridden at altitude has experienced this. Your ability to put out power is diminished typically by like 20%. I mean, it will be less as you become adapted to altitude if you're staying there for several weeks, but the initial hit is quite high. Therefore, you're not going to be able to create, the altitude itself is going to create a stimulus that's going to result in changes in your red blood cell count and your blood plasma volume. However, you're not getting the training adaptation of training at your typical intensities. So you get the altitude impact, but if you're staying at altitude and training at altitude, you just can't ride as hard. So you're actually, you're disadvantaged because you're not going to be able to train as hard at altitude if you're not fully adapted to it.
But like Visma, when they do their pre-tour training camp, they're not training low; they're training high.
Do you know that for certain?
Well, yeah, they're at. I watched the documentary, and they're all at teens before the. Like high in the Alps.
They're there for like 2 months, though. I feel like they probably are adapted. We might be seeing them when they're adapted. I mean, again, going back to Camp and Ertz, who lived on the volcano, I believe, he would drive down to the bottom to do his training, and then he was living high at like 9,000 feet. Since you brought up Visma, you sent us. We're jumping around a little bit, but you sent a link to a study related to carbon monoxide rebreathing that showed it didn't just produce a marginal gain. If you did it frequently enough, it looked like it produced a maximal, like a huge performance improvement where it was like what, 3% improvement in VO2 max.
Yeah, it was in The Economist, so presumably true, I guess. 5%
Hold on,
improvement in
you believe
hemoglobin
MSM?
mass. Is The Economist MSN, man? They're truth warriors in the city. 5% increase in hemoglobin mass, and then I think it was 2 or 3% increase
I
in
mean,
VO2 max,
those are
which
EPO
isn't like,
numbers.
well, I'd be curious. I'm going to ask some people on my ride today if what exactly they're seeing from EPO. But I guess, it's EPO numbers. If you assume like Harry Sweeney, fully trained, no other place to go. If you could give Harry Sweeney 3% more VO2 numbers, that is probably about what EPO would be.
Yeah. I mean,
it's also, we should also say before to jump around even more, Harry Sweeney was doing a blood test on his ride, and he was pushing 320 watts at, he said, like around 7,000 feet for a long time. Did a lactate test well below lactate threshold, like mid zone 2. So holy smokes! If you want to
his blood lactate was like he had just gotten up off the couch to go grab some chips.
It's like, I mean, he is a little heavier. He's listed at 75 kilos, but that's near, tells you that his high zone 2 is probably near 5 watts per kilo. So like Keegan, someone emailed in my other show I do with Johan Bernil. He's like, I just don't think many World Tour pros could do 5 watts per kilo for 6 hours. It's like, dude, that might be like a Visma training ride. They might be doing that today to shake the legs out. But on the rebreathing, CO2 rebreathing, I guess a few important points we should say before we go into this. Those were big numbers. I was shocked by how much that can improve you. It's not clear that this is happening. I talked to someone last night about Jonas Vingegaard a few weeks ago, made waves, made news, and I think Escape probably didn't handle this as well as they could have, where he said like they had him saying, yes, people are using CO2 rebreathing for performance enhancing gains. I guess Escape interpreted that to mean they're like going in and breathing in CO2 so much that their bodies think they're dying, and then they produce more red blood cells to keep them from dying from, I guess, CO2 inhalation. Apparently now Visma is saying that's not what he was saying. He was just saying, I guess, that they're using it for performance enhancing gains because they can measure their hemoglobin mass to go back to the training camps to judge if these training camps are working or not, or if they should tweak the camps. Because it's really one of the only ways to tell like what's the actual effect of this training camp. And as you said, is the altitude benefit outweighing the lower wattages we're riding at right before the tour? Like, should we change something up? So it's not clear if anyone is actually using this in the way that The Economist is out, like laying out, like going in and ripping CO2 bongs so much that your body starts producing more red blood cells. And one of the main reasons this is difficult or couldn't happen, because the makers of those machines like know when the machines are being used, probably so people don't die when they're doing this. So you would have to it would have to be collusion that goes all the way to the top, because you'd have to be in partnership with the manufacturer of the machine saying like, we're going to use this 5 times a day and don't ask us why. So it's not clear that this is actually going on. And if it was going on up until a week ago, it would not have been against the rules.
I mean, to me, that's the main thing. If teams are doing, not if they're doing, I just assume they're doing anything they possibly can that's not yet banned. And whether it's good for people, probably not. That's just,
well, is ingesting 200 carbs an hour good for you?
We don't know
probably
yet.
Not.
We don't know yet, but we're going to find out.
It's definitely not good for your torque. You're never going to recover.
Yeah, I shot you a note about a Joey Roscoff video that I watched, and he was talking about the use of sodium bicarb again, not banned. It's just something that people are doing. And Martin and some other manufacturers now have it in a gel form. I've actually never tried this. Have you ever done stuff with sodium bicarb?
No, actually, we should have asked Kip about it. He's like a big
Okay.
bicarb guy.
And so,
Doesn't do it
right.
anymore.
So they're
I
the
believe.
topical products that you can rub on. You can adjust it. I mean, I remember late 80s, early 90s. And I think I've talked about my coach I had in LA he's amazing. He's one of the most knowledgeable people I've ever met in the sport. His name's David Brenton. I think he's still coaching. I did an episode of Choose the Hard Way with him. I recommend listening to it. One of the most interesting people I've ever met. But he was in the USA Cycling pipeline circa Eddie B. If anybody remembers Eddie B, legendary Eastern Bloc coach who came to the United States. But back in those days, I mean, people were taking like Arm & Hammer baking soda and chugging it in order to get the lactic buffering effect. Now we have topical gels. You can get the Martin gels. And the thing Joey Roscoff talked about was he said that he would just put Alka-Seltzer in his bottles because it's 2 grams, I guess, of sodium bicarb. I didn't know this. I'm chemistry ignorant. Sodium bicarb, I guess, is just a type of salt. So it's a form of salt. And he was like, yeah, man, like Alka-Seltzer doesn't taste that bad. It's easy to drink. So I just like plop, fizz a few of those in my bottles, and I get the lactic buffering effect in a race. Now I'm like, man, do I need to be putting Alka-Seltzer in my finish bottles that I'm using for some of those big rides on Zwift when it's 2 degrees outside?
Did you see Mike Woods last year? He was like, had like a cereal bowl during a race, and he's like eating his sodium.
Yeah, I did. I saw that. And then, yeah. I mean, obviously we go pretty deep to bring some of this information to you all. The Dan Bigham hour record attempt video from Ineos with him eating, I guess it was the same thing with the Ghana hour record video where they were eating those bowls of ice chips before going out on the track to cool their core. It just like, it looks so miserable. Just go to Quick Trip and get a, whatever they call the Slurpee at Quick Trip. I don't remember. Right?
Yeah, that will do it.
Why not? Yeah. Okay. We're really jumping around, but Spencer, I just shot you a link to a PDF from the Financial Times. So there was an article that came out, I think about 2 weeks ago, and it was about the use of xenon gas for.
What is going on with London financial magazines?
Yeah, they love the doping. Well, I mean, we know that, people in finance, some of them love, they love to enhance their performance just to have fun with certain products. And some people go really deep into the world of endurance sports. And when they go in really deep. They do things like buy T100 and other things. In this video, it's talking about a method to prepare people to rapidly ascend Mount Everest without the traditional adaptation period, which, people will spend 6 weeks to 2 months on the mountain. And what this commercial outfit is doing is they wait for a weather window on Everest, and then they take people, fly them in, and then once where do they go to? Anyway, they go to somewhere approximate to Everest, and then they put this helmet on that looks like an old diving bell, and then they give these people xenon gas, and then they like helicopter them to the mountain, and they immediately do their climb without any of the, going to base camp, going to camp 1, advanced base camp, all that stuff. There's some outrage about this. I thought this was really funny. I think we've talked about xenon gas on here.
Outrage about this.
There is like the climbing. I could send you some other links. There's a lot of, this is not in line with the ethic, blah, 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 blah.
This could be like gravel. Like this is not in line with.
Yeah, but what was hilarious about this to me, I don't remember if we've talked about this publicly, but I know privately we've talked at length about the use of xenon gas in the Soviet Union and Eastern Bloc for hockey. Like, I mean,
or even like the modern Eastern Europe and Central Asia. Like all these hockey players, like they call
Yeah.
it Russian gas. And they're like, yeah, there's a tube coming out of the wall and you suck on it and you
Yeah,
feel good.
totally.
Like this is happening now.
They've talked about it a lot on the Spit and Chicklets podcast, which I'm not a hockey player, but there's some pretty funny content on there at certain points in time. So anyway, I just thought this was hilarious. This is like WADA banned xenon gas in, I think, like a decade ago, but it's back. It's big time. I wonder what PEDs you could just give regular people to climb Everest that people aren't already talking about.
I mean, EPO would be, seems like the easy one.
I don't know.
Here, so to show you time is a flat circle, 2014 Road magazine, road.cc, xenon, the next big thing in legal doping. Like it could just be, that's just CO2 rebreathing. And then of course, WADA bans xenon and argon gas. Like shortly after, I don't think we said this. We should say the UCI, it gets a little funny when WADA doesn't ban things. Like it was the same thing with tramadol. Like it's banned by the UCI, but not by WADA.
It's okay. It's okay to use as long as you're not Nairo Quintana and they don't want to run you out of the sport.
Yeah, that's still, I don't know how much we should say on that. That's still kind of a weird thing. The thing with Nairo, I think, my theory, a little bit of an intelligence test because it's banned in competition. You can take it at home. You know, all the pain you have at home, take your tramadol. The reason you can't take it at a race is they don't want you all like, what do you call it? Like viked out. Like you're basically on opioids going 60 miles an hour in a group of people, and then you crash. And there was a lot of big high-speed crashes before tramadol was banned because guys were high when they were racing. So with Nairo, it's like, well, how did this get in your system? Like either you just decided to take it in a race, which is crazy because you know you're getting tested. So we're not interested in you if you decided that was a good idea, or it got into your system via more like illegal means. So I think with Nairo, it's like none of the outcomes are good. And he's not fast. So what's the point? But he is back, I guess, with Movistar. But so CO2 rebreathing is now not allowed by the UCI, but that's actually not true. I looked at the actual rule. You can use it to measure your hemoglobin mass. It's like you get like one rebreathing per month or something like that. There's some limit on it. So you can't go back and like do it you can use it to measure the effects of altitude. You can't abuse it and be within the realm of the rules. But where this gets really tricky is how do you know? Like you can't test someone because if they're like, oh, you have a bunch of CO2 in your system, it's like, oh, I've been behind a team car all day, or we raced through Paris and I breathed in a bunch of CO2. Like you can't really prove it. I guess it is there like in case someone is buying a machine. I mean, it would actually be very hard to catch someone doing it. I mean, maybe one of the manufacturers would say, we think this is being abused by someone that purchased it. Can you look into this? And then they would have a means to punish them. But once you start thinking about enforcement of this, it is actually kind of difficult to do.
One of the things that I find to be really interesting in professional cycling and just in cycling in general, I was thinking about this while I was watching the Alula Tour, is there are things that if you decide to cheat, or even if you find some gray area legal mechanism to improve your performance, there are certain things that can help you. And then there are other things that are just forces of nature that you have to have a high level of skill and you have to be accustomed to certain circumstances. And there's really no way to dope your way around it. Although I think if you had some kind of secret edge, of course, that's always going to make you stronger and more likely to do well. What am I talking about? I'm talking about crosswinds. I'm talking about like 30 mile an hour crosswinds. I'm talking about echelons. And for people watching bike racing who maybe haven't experienced this, Spencer, I thought it would be useful for us just to talk a little bit here at the outset of the season, because if I know one thing, it's that more crosswinds are coming and echelons are going to make or break some big moments in races in 2025 and every year on planet Earth when there are bike races. What did we see happen at the Alula Tour with echelons? And like, why is this such a tricky circumstance that arises in bike races?
Yeah, it's a great question. Before we do that, just I want to make sure I have my information correct. I don't know. I'm more confused now than ever about the rule. The AP says it's actually now a banned to own the machine. So you can go to a facility and carbon monoxide rebreathe. Apparently, you just can't own the
So
machine to
this
abuse
is
it.
like open air drug markets. Like Switzerland used to
Yeah,
have, like you could go
exactly.
shoot heroin there, but like you can't have heroin at home. Yeah,
Can't take that home.
yeah.
That's bad. Yeah, crosswinds super interesting. You see them like obviously like Northern Europe, famous for them, like Belgium. But if we just, I kind of like these Middle Eastern races because it's like the most pure version of crosswinds because there's no. So I guess Tour of Oman has some really good climbs. UAE Tour has some good climbs, but mostly you're racing on like open, exposed, flat roads. What happens when you're in the desert with flat roads and they're grids? So you're going like one way, you turn, you're going another way. If there's any wind and you turn, you're going to be in a crosswind. The reason crosswinds are hard is because you normally draft like back to front. So if you're in the back, if you're last wheel in a regular conditions, you're getting like the most draft. It's very easy. Crosswind, you can only draft sideways. So like an echelon is when people are across the road drafting, but you run out of real estate. It's like after 7 riders, there's no other place to be. So you have to form a new echelon. If you're strung out behind an echelon, like in single file, no one's getting draft. So it's actually harder for you behind than it is for the people rotating through up front. Like I had a coach who was always like, if there's crosswinds, like start rotating through because it's actually easier for the people setting the pace than the people trying to draft. Because every time you rotate through, you're in the draft when you immediately after coming off the front until you hit the front again. And even when you're on the front, it's just as hard for you. It's equally as hard for you as it is everyone suffering behind. So you will get dropped eventually if we're behind. Where it gets even more complicated is cross tailwinds because then it's actually easier for the people in front because you're being pushed along at a high speed. So everything's amplified. And then when you're rotating through, like you could be going 50, 60 miles an hour in a cross tailwind, and then the people behind aren't getting any draft. And if like there's a foot
Yeah.
gap, a meter gap, that's going to blow out. I mean, it looks easy. You look at these crosswinds, the Lula Tour, you say on the final day it happened, you're like, man, that's only 20 meters. Like, how could you not get across that? It's almost impossible. And like Mark Cavendish would say, it's like quicksand. Like the moment you realize you're in trouble, it's too late. We later found out quicksand doesn't really exist, but good analogy. But like really the only way to get across, like Cavendish was good at it because he was like, I would have to sprint like it was the end of the race to make it across because that's the only way you're going to get over the speed differential of the different echelons.
Yeah, exactly. So if you're out there, you get in a crosswind, like let's say you're out there on the bus stop or you're on the see me ride, Montrose ride.
I've been on the bad end of
Yeah, I mean,
crosswinds on the bus
honestly, it
stop.
gets even trickier, believe it or not, when you're out on a group ride and you have a center line rule because there's actually active traffic coming in the other direction because you have a very narrow piece of road. And as Spencer mentioned, it's going to be a maximum. If you're on one lane, it's probably a maximum, maybe 6 bikes, right? So like you have 6 riders and you would think, oh, well, I'll just sit on that last person. But what that means is if you're sitting on the back of an echelon, you're getting as much wind as the person eating wind at the front at the point of highest exposure. You're getting no draft and you're like right there. You get nothing.
And the person setting the pace is eating as much wind as you, and then they
Yeah,
won't be
completely.
eating in
Yeah.
wind. Yeah, it's like it's the worst cycle you could possibly be in if you're at the back.
And teams and individuals from Northern Europe, like Belgian teams, for example, Quick Step, they're typically the best at this because they grow up racing in these conditions at kermesses. They're doing it all the time, all day, every day. And then people from other geographies tend to not be quite as good. And with some teams are really notorious for always getting caught out and not making it into the first echelon. Like, I don't know. The first team that comes to mind is Movistar. I feel like they would like never make the first echelon. I think they've gotten a little bit better at it, but it's a critical skill. And like we've even seen this at the tour in certain stages where crosswinds rip the race apart and that's become a big part of strategy is, hey, if we can get our team to the front, expend some energy, create that first echelon on our own and like break off everyone else, then like you get like 2 or 3 minute gaps sometimes. It's bananas.
Yeah, it can often. I mean, I'm actually thinking about Tadej Pogacar lost a bunch of time in crosswinds in 2020 because he got a flat, and then so he was like in the back. Oftentimes, it can be like the biggest gaps you see in a race, like more so than a mountaintop finish. There's countries in Europe that get more wind than others. I mean, like the northern countries, as you said, get a lot because if it's flat on the coast, like the wind comes in from the ocean, and then there's nothing to stop it. So it's like France gets a lot of wind in parts, but just parts. The Netherlands gets wind, Belgium gets wind, and then some countries don't get that much wind. Like Italy doesn't get a lot of wind in the parts where you would be racing. So yeah, like the teams from Spain and Italy like are often caught out because like what the hell's going on here? Like how many times have you seen echelons at the Giro? It almost never happens. Super interesting that it can be so localized. We should say on now that you've mentioned crosswinds, good wedge into actual race results. They actually played a big part at the Tour Down Under because there was crosswinds going into Wollonga Hill, which is like the most important. I kind of like the Tour Down Under because it's almost reminds me of a race you would do like in college where it's like, well, there's not going to be big time gaps, but it's a 3-stage race. It's all about basically it's like track racing on the road where it's like you got to get the best position possible so you get bonus seconds or you win the count back. But there's a 3-minute climb, 3.5-minute climb. It would take us like 10 minutes. It takes them 3 minutes. But leading into it, there's always crosswinds. Luke Plapp sitting at the back. I still don't understand that. Like, what was he thinking? And like, what are they saying in his ear? But like sitting at the back, misses out on crosswinds. Ineos breaks it up. He does get back to the front, but think how much energy burned getting back to the front. And then like Navarez just ate his lunch on Wollonga. Like, I'll just follow you. I'll win the race. I'm going to tie this all together. But Alulu Tour, Tom Pidcock, amazing, just crushes everyone. Not the strongest competition. Like Uno X got second and third with riders that are good, but not major riders. Good for Uno X, though. How did Uno X get second and third? Because they broke the race up on the final day with crosswinds. Impressive, Pidcock stayed at the front. Even more impressive, Pidcock's teammate, who like is not a prolific winner on a team that does not win very much, Q36.5, wins the final stage against really good sprinters. So that shows you like they're feeling the Pidcock magic at that team. Who's the team that broke the race up at Tour Down Under? Ineos. Who's the team that did a pretty good race on Sunday at La Marseille? Ineos. Who's not winning any of these races? Ineos. Who could use Tom Pidcock? Ineos. Who could use Jonathan Navarez? Ineos. Those riders were just on Ineos. Like, what is going on here? How is this team? Imagine how frustrated they are, where it's like Pidcock decided not to do Cyclocross World Championship so he could focus on the road. Is that just an FU to Ineos? That's what they wanted him to do for like 4 years.
And then he said he was going to focus on stage racing. We talked about this a bit in the last episode.
And then he wins the stage race.
Goes out and wins his first stage race. A win is a win. Hats off, chapeau, Tom. And same thing with Navarez at Tour Down Under. I want to ask though, so Spencer, I'm looking back at past winners. Like, let's take a look at past winners of the Alula Tour. So 2025, Tom Pidcock. 2024, Simon Yates. 2023, Ruben Guerrero. 2022, Max von Giles, Phil Bauhaus, 2020, etc. We take a look at Tour Down Under past winners. 2024, Steve Williams. 23, Jay Vine. 2020, Richie Port. And then prior to that, Daryl Impey, Richie Port. Is it actually a curse to win one of these early season races?
No, it used to be.
Why has it changed?
For reasons I can't. I don't know. Stevie Williams, you just said, won Tour Down Under last year, had the best year of his career. You know, he won what? He won Flush Malone, right? He was good all year. It's like I don't fully understand why that's happening, but it must be modern training, I guess. I don't know. But for whatever reason, the riders like at the Tour Down Under last year, the riders who finished in the top 5 all had the best year of their career, including Jonathan Narvaez, who was one of only 2 riders to beat Tadej Pogacar in a race last year. So no, that can't be true. In a one-on-one sprint last year. So clearly had a good season. And then I'm looking, what'd you call Max Van Giles? I almost didn't recognize his name. I think that's wait, maybe that is a different writer. Is it not Maxine Van Hills? Is that the writer? Like Vangils?
We're gonna have to ask Google Translate. I don't have the. Yeah,
But even just going back through listening to you say those winners, there's like been a noticeable uptick. Yeah, Maxine Van Hills in
yeah.
2022, like a noticeable uptick in quality since 2022. Because Van Hill's a really good rider. Ruben Guerrero, good rider. Simon Yates, like that's serious. And then Pidcock, before, obviously a lot less serious. And the same thing with Down Under. Like, remember Bridgie Port would crush Wollonga Hill and then not be good. It's like, man, are you hurting your season by doing this? I looked it up. Narvaez did Wollonga Hill like 15 seconds faster than Richie Port did. So they're going faster at these early season races and then holding their form better. But we should have
let's
trainer
let's
on
talk
to
about
explain
Simon
this to
Yates.
us.
So obviously he's moving into a support role more or less coming out of a Lula Tour last year. We don't see. I mean, he doesn't take another victory, but that also kind of has to do with the pecking order within that team, the role that he took on. And I mean, he knew the hand he had been dealt when he signed that contract. And that, I guess, was the moment in the year when he could ride for himself. And then the rest of the time he's doing his job. So maybe that's not really a direct comparison.
Simon Yates
with
last
Pidcock,
year.
though.
Wait. Was he in a support? He wasn't in a support. I think you're thinking of Adam Yates. Because Simon Yates was Jayco's leader last year at the tour.
Oh, wow. Well,
you've been Yates.
Well, I'm just looking at results. I'm just saying the rest of his season did probably.
Well, he did get second and third. He got second in a tour stage and then third at a tour stage. The two toughest mountain stages of the race. Not bad.
Not bad. Not a win.
It's not a win. I mean, he doesn't win a lot. It is. I mean, that supports like also Jayco. They needed points. I mean, that's another thing here. Like you look at these races, like Uno X breaking it up on the final day so they can move into second and third overall. I guess in theory, they could have caught Pidcock out and won the race, but they immediately knew he was there. They keep driving because they're like, they need those points. Like everyone's racing for points unless you're the top
I think
five teams.
I think you're kind of inadvertently proving my point, though, that Pidcock winning this does it portend big things to come? Potentially, we don't know. It's not like if Pidcock's aim were to win an actual Grand Tour this year, which
well, that's not happening. I don't think he's not a Grand Tour rider.
Well, I don't know. He said he wants to be a stage racer now, so
well, maybe he meant the Alula Tour.
Maybe I don't know.
I want to win.
I don't know.
Shitty 1 week races.
Yeah,
we don't know.
We'll see what happens with Pidcock. I think the most important thing is I think he just needed to get a win under his belt, as is the case with almost everything in life. The thing that will help you win the most is winning something. And yeah, I mean, we see it in sprinting and cycling. I think that we're going to see this with Pidcock. I think he really needed something that felt like a significant win on the road under his belt. I think we're going to see him have a hot hand, and I think it's going to be cracking. So I'm excited to see what happens when he gets back in the general population with a level of talent that's more commensurate with his own. That's the other thing with the field he was racing against. Like, did he survive the crosswinds in some tricky moments? Was that massive climb effort? I'm forgetting the name of the climb where he broke off those he was with a group of 4 and then he held a gap for 8 kilometers, which I thought was super impressive because they were
they were like rotated.
Yeah, it was no joke. It was the kind of thing where you're like, yeah, you don't see that often out on the bus stop or Montrose ride, right? But
apparently best 5 and 10 minute powers.
Yeah, that's what he said following the race. So I think he's looking good, man. I'm pretty excited about this new Lazarus style Tom Pidcock. He's back from the road dead and he's rolled back the stone and is out of the tomb. He's ready to walk.
It is, as you said, I'm recognizing the reference. As you say, nothing helps you win like winning. He did increase his win count, career win total by 60% in 5 days. So pretty impressive. Another weird subplot of this race. Stage 4, you just mentioned. Pidcock wins. The guy who gets second, do you know the significance of this guy?
No.
Alan Hotherley. He's world mountain bike champion. Tom Pidcock is Olympic mountain bike champion,
Whoa.
like defending. So it's like the active world and Olympic mountain bike champion pursuit on top
Wow.
of, it's called the Sky Views of Haret Plateau. Um, Pretty interesting, actually. But as you say, like, are you saying beating Rainer Keplinger is not a big deal? Jonas
No
Kolsut? Come
disrespect.
on,
I'm sure
Andrew.
they're great humans. Yeah.
Oh, I think these guys are like studs too. Like Johannes is 20 years old on Uno X, and he finished on the
Yeah.
podium at a 2.1 race. That's a big deal. I think Rainier, strong rider, strong person, even better rider. Eddie Dunbar, pretty good, but Eddie Dunbar did not look at full Eddie Dunbar strength to me during that race, and I think he was working for Allen, who good pickup by Jayco, by the way. I don't think many teams he was on the radar. I didn't even know he wanted to race road, and now they've signed like one of the best engines in the sport. You would assume if you can win a world championship mountain bike title, and now he's on their team. I think they picked him up after the triathlon signing fell through. On Pidcock, yeah, don't expect him to win a Grand Tour this year. Here's the weird thing: why did he not do Cyclocross Worlds? Like, what was the deal with that?
Well, he was at the Alula Tour, right? I mean, you're not going to come back from that and like jump
And
into CX Worlds, I don't think.
well, yeah, like was the Alula Tour unmissable? I still
He's
don't
a
fully. It
he's a
clearly
stage
worked
racer
out
now.
for them. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, if you want to win, you got to win. And he thought the Alula Tour gave him the chance. You could argue, like, what's the utility of going to Cyclocross Worlds and finishing third? Is that helping you? But like Wout and Vanderpool, who finished first and second, I guess second and first at Cyclocross Worlds, claim that that's better preparation for the road than these
Of
early
course
season
they say
races.
that. Of course they say
Maybe
that.
they don't.
Yeah.
Did you watch Cyclocross Worlds?
The like 5th annual Matthew Vanderpool time trial. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So he starts first. He solos away. It's like carbon copy of every Vanderpool race. Well, I don't fully understand this, and I didn't mention it in the newsletter because I didn't fully get the rules. It was like Wout Van Aert was like a cat five. He was like
Yeah.
starting last row. The guy was like half a mile behind within 30 seconds. I guess he just didn't have the
Yeah.
points to be on the front row. But did Matthew Vanderpool didn't race that much this year? Is it because he was defending world champion? He
I
could be at the
I
front.
think
Do you know?
because when Vanderpool raced, he won so frequently, he had enough points to be in pole position.
Okay.
And Wout started late and did not have good results. It's just hilarious to me how in certain areas of the sport, the UCI is very doctrinaire about the hierarchy of gridding people based on points. And then when it comes to something like the Gravel World Championships, for example, that all goes out the window and they're like, okay, we're just going to stick these World Tour riders that haven't done a gravel race all year. We'll just put them on the front of the grid. Like, tough luck, everybody.
Well, I think the UCI, like, everyone's understands those aren't real races. Like, we're not putting Matthew Vanderpool at the back. That's not
Yeah,
happening.
but I mean, with cyclocross, since Wout and Matthew are the people who are going to truly animate these races, and it's who people actually, no disrespect to Ellie Iserbit, who I would love to see on a world tour team. I'm very curious why we don't see him riding at the world tour level on the road. But just put Wout in front of these people. Like, put the two riders who have the best chance of winning in the front row. I mean, again, for people out there who have you know, carried the heavy weight of 3 wheel sets and a pit bike out to Valmont, or the equivalent, maybe out in the Bay Area, out to Candlestick or El Toro Park, you know that it sucks when you're going out to do these races and you haven't gotten enough points and you're stuck like third or fourth row because you're just not going to win. It's almost impossible to win in cyclocross because of the nature of the courses if you're not on the front of the grid. It sucks.
Yeah, I can't. I mean, I guess they must have a strong lobby, like these pro crossers. Like I don't, because wow, like maybe he probably wouldn't have won, but it was one of his best races of his like recent career. Like by the time he caught the chase group, he was about like 45 seconds behind Vanderpool, and that's what he
Yeah.
finished at the end. So like he dumps, massive amounts of watts just to even get to the chase group, and then holds them even for the rest of the race. And you're like, well, we'll never know. Like that could have been an awesome race, but they served us up like a steaming pile of dog poop instead. Like thanks, cyclocross.
Yeah, and
That's
Wout
awesome.
was involved in a crash early on in the race, so we got to see Wout's new signature look, which is being on the ground in a major race.
It went like an exposed hip for the rest of the race.
We've seen a lot of Wout's hips the past couple of years, unfortunately. And
I can't believe if I was him, I mean, clearly he's a better person than me. I would have said, you're not putting me on the front. I'm not
totally. I mean,
this crap.
We can't know for sure, but I feel like there might be some organization besides the UCI that has a hand in some of this.
Well, there is like, so Super Prestige is not, that's like a private company. That's not, those aren't World Cups. So there's like power brokers in cyclocross.
I just get the feeling a lot's going on in cyclocross, perhaps related to sports betting is kind of my feeling.
We shouldn't say anymore. There's definitely, it's a complex and beautiful ecosystem. We'll just leave it at that. Yeah. It's the closest I think to like professional wrestling that you maybe track racing, like the 6 days could be a little funny, some funny things going on there, but cyclocross is like up there with like WWE in terms of how it's run and what it really is. But I was going to say something. I've completely forgotten it. I'm watching 2 early season races, but one rider, you just in my notes, that had a good race at Cyclocross Worlds, I believe, top 20, Scott Funston from Boulder, Colorado. He's like 22 years old, gets top 20, which is like, I think of like Jeremy Powers, like that would have been a big result. And he's like, yeah, I'm like just leaving. I'm stepping away. I can't make any money in cyclocross, which makes sense. Like if you're an American cross racer, I don't understand financially how that works for anybody because it's so expensive to travel around to races. But are you surprised more all discipline riders aren't saying this?
Yeah, I definitely am surprised. In some of these disciplines, I don't think there's actually a path to making a living at all. Like I think you can't make a living as a professional cyclocross racer if you're from the United States. If you go way, way back, people like Jonathan Page, this was pre-Jeremy Powers. I don't know. Do you remember Jonathan Page? Yeah, I mean, absolute legend. He was one of the first Americans, maybe the first, who moved full-time to Europe to race cyclocross. I remember reading about him in the print edition of Velo News. Like once every 6 months, you would read 300 words about this guy. It was so mysterious, though, at the time. The world has lost a lot of its mystery. And it's a little bit different now. But I mean, unless you're living in Europe full-time and you're getting paid appearance fees, that's part of how cyclocross works. The best riders in the sport get paid a fee to show up at the races. That's often based on the previous season's World Cup placings and
And I think that's why like Super Prestige is like where most people make their money.
It's appearance fees.
Like a closed ecosystem. And I think that's why Page moved to Belgium. So he could like hit up as many of those races as
completely. Possible. And it just, I mean, Jesus Christ, it takes so much equipment to do these races. I was watching some behind the scenes footage, and each of these riders, we're talking at least 2 bikes, probably 3 that have to go all the way to Europe, and then probably 4 wheel sets, and then everything else that goes along with that. So just before you even get to the starting line, you've got like $25,000 of equipment. And And you got to put that on
Yeah,
an
it's
airplane if
crazy.
you're coming from North America. Then you have to have,
Well, you have a
you have to have a
mechanic too.
mechanic. It's just a huge pain in the butt, and you're just automatically disadvantaged if you're an American and you don't grow up doing this from the time you're 5 years old. Everything from getting a good parking space for your team van or minivan to like knowing where the bathrooms are.
Your
Yeah, your
Lamborghini.
Lamborghini, your $300,000 watch, like whatever the case may be, just simple people doing simple things out in the farm fields. That's how it goes.
And I mean, even think about logistically how much cheaper it is if you're Belgian
Right.
and you live in
Right.
Belgium. You can just get these races like so much easier. You're not flying
Right.
around the world. I mean, one thing like Kate Courtney didn't renew with Scott mountain bike team, is now a privateer racing the mountain bike circuit. So essentially doing what gravel races are doing, but for mountain bike. The appeal for her is the races are like 90 minutes to 2 hours long as opposed to 10 hours long. So I get why she's doing that. But financially, like she's going out and getting her own sponsors. Like, can you imagine how much money you would have to put together to even break even to do a World Cup mountain bike calendar? Because it's like everything you just said about cyclocross is pretty much the same. You have to have
Yeah.
multiple bikes, got to have a
Right.
mechanic, you got to get all these races. Like it would be shockingly
Yeah. Well, we
expensive.
can hear Spencer physically getting more sick as this podcast goes on. So we're going to try to wrap this up here pretty soon. Something I wanted to say about the Scott Funston thing and the direction of professional cycling in North America. I think that there are going to continue to be 3 to 5 riders per generation every, like maybe every 5 years. You're going to have 3 to 5 men and women who have the genetic ability and have the work ethic and create the opportunities for themselves to end up in a position where they're making, just like, we'll make it simple, they're going to make more than somewhere between $100,000 and $1 million a year riding for a world tour level team. Everyone else who's in professional cycling is not going to make enough money to make a living. And the path for most of these people is to like take a bit more of a pro wrestling approach and turn yourself into your own sports entertainment content business. And I think that's what writers are doing who are successful. I mean, this podcast is about a lot of things. We primarily focus on the very highest level of professional cycling. And I think we should acknowledge what is the reality for riders today and like how many opportunities are there actually now and will there be in the next couple of years. So I think Scott Funston's assessment is correct. If someone just wants to maximize their earning ability and they've concluded I don't have what it takes to actually get to the level of the sport where I could be like a Sepp Kuss, somebody making, probably very high six figures, low sevens.
Oh, like higher, like probably not mid sevens, but he's probably been making in the sevens for a while. Like if you're a mountain domestique of that ability, there's not that many.
There are not that many, but there are some, and there are a few people who are that good. Like Quinn Simmons, I think, is that good. How many Quinn Simmons come along? How often? And then for everybody else, it's like, this is the thing you're doing. You're going to have an interesting life experience. You're going to get to experience sport at the highest level. And I think if you want to turn that into a business, then you need to become a sport entertainment product and start doing some interesting things to draw attention to yourself other than your results, because you're not going to be getting them.
Yeah. I mean, like a Harry Sweeney, like what we just talked about, like with a great YouTube channel. I mean, here, just to give you an idea of some of these salaries, a guy who ranked below 800 in the 2024 rider rankings went to UAE from Lotto this offseason. He makes €1 million a year. Like, so if you're on one of these top teams, you're making, everyone that starts a grand tour for these teams is making over €1 million a year. So that's, life is good if you're on UAE, Visma, or Red Bull.
And you're on the tour team. So we're talking about like 27 people.
Yeah, well, I did hear Ineos signed a Neo Pro Like this is like a 18-year-old rider for 700,000 euros a year. No results.
Wow.
So it's like, isn't that crazy? Like the price it takes to even get riders who aren't currently good, but could be good at some point is now nearing a million euros a year. It makes me wonder, maybe there's just always good riders and they're always available, but it kind of makes me wonder, like, what's the future for someone like Groupama
Right.
or
Drone
Lotto?
Hopper.
Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. Can you keep Drone Hop? I think that team
It's the best.
is no
I mean,
longer.
drone, we need to do like a where are they now on some of the early break riders for Drone Hopper and like 2018 through 2023 tours of Italy.
Crazy thing about that team. So you think, like, why are people doing that? There's a guy named Simon Pelode. He was on Drone Hopper before it was called Drone Hopper, and Droni Giacatti Cedar Mech. He just got in a bunch of breakaways. I don't think he got any results. And then he got signed to Trek Segafredo because they're like, hey, I know that guy. That guy has been on a bunch of breakaways.
We know he
so
can
it did
just
work
ride on the front for a while. Great.
Yeah, perfect. And he was in the world tour for a year and then on tutor for 2 years. So, hey, kids, getting those breakaways if you're on.
Yeah,
small
make
teams.
your chances.
And Andrew's going to start. You got to go because you're going to start training to get that Neo Pro contract on Ineos. And then you can get that low-priced Girona apartment to go along with it. Beautiful luxury apartment.
There's another thing I love about the Harry Sweeney content. I love the Euro apartments or condos where it's the kitchen and then there's like a tiny washing machine under the counter. You're like, man, this is so efficient. It looks so chic.
Yeah, I don't know what the deal is with that. And then some places like the UK, they like, it's like, okay, it's a washing machine. You're like, where's the dryer? Like, we don't have one. Like, what? This is the one place in the world where you need it. What are you talking about?
Just use
no
a
dryers?
Hang
it outside.
Squeeze it between two towels and then make that towel dry somehow.
It's like a Greg Van Avermaet video, and he's like outside, like hanging up his dryer.
Yeah, so that when you put on your cycling kit, your like $1,000 bibs and jersey, which is what I feel like it costs these days, it's just going to be board stiff because it's been hanging out in the wind.
There's bugs in it. It's been blown into the bushes.
Yeah, when you've been traveling for bike races, have you ever used the method where, you know, you hand wash? I don't think hand washing actually does anything, especially for bibs you've been sitting on all day. But sometimes that's what you have to do when you're on the road. So you have like the powdered detergent. You're kind of pretending that you're cleaning them by scrubbing them in the sink. And then when you get done, you have to take a towel, you get a teammate, and then like you each twist up and into the towel to like wring out. Right.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And then what's the great shame that can happen? The next day it rains and your bibs are sudsing and everyone makes fun of you, which is a funny thing to make fun of. It's like, this guy washed his shorts. What a loser.
Yeah. How about that?
And then like day 4, it's like no one's smelling that good. People need the washer dryer. It's hurting everybody. Well, I'll let you go, Andrew. Right. You got big training.
Yeah, Dustin, huge block coming up. Getting ready for the 27-mile walk. We'll be talking about that on a future episode. Spencer is not fully committed. Kaplan is in, and then of course we have the Katy Trail gravel fondo coming up in mid-April. So if you're in the Missouri, Kansas area, you can reach out to us. You can DM me at Hardway Pod if you would like to come. Sit on the front, ideally an e-bike or tandem. It's a 135-mile stretch of rail trail from outside Kansas City to Columbia, Missouri, and we need some people to eat wind. Looking at April 16th. Is that you? DM me at Hardway Pod.
I would say on the 27-mile walk, it's on my daughter's birthday. So
we've actually tried to schedule all of the major upcoming events just like based on the birthdays of people Spencer's close to, whose birthdays he needs to attend. Yeah, perfect. I think the greatest thing you could do for your daughter is show her your grit and determination, so she'll look up to you more.
What'd you do, Daddy? I walked 27 miles in cotton underwear for you. I would say underwear choice on that. I mean, shoe choice obviously important. Your underwear choice is going to be key.
Yeah.
Important. Yeah. Yeah, you don't want to. I've had days where I've put in 20, 30,000 steps. You got the wrong underwear on. Oh my God. You need like a medevac to get you out of there.
Okay.
All right. Well, thanks, Andrew.
Have a
and we will
great
talk
day.
soon.